Hello, I'm Jeff Jones, Fast Track Software's Territory Director for EMEA, and I'm going to continue our webinar series on usage personas. Up to now, we've covered POP, we've covered Robo, and previously we've done, I think, Hero. And today we're going to have a look at a very important use case scenario, which is that of Whiz, the developer type of profile. I guess developer maybe, or power user, some people may call them, but we have to treat these users with a specific type of usage persona because their type of usage and the number of times they elevate and the type of elevations they do is quite different from a standard user. So in today's webinar, we'll have a look at a typical configuration of Whiz and talk about how that is a good match to keep developers productive. So I have, as I always like to start off with my webinars, an endpoint that does not have any admin rights, and we're going to sort of build a configuration for what I would consider to be productive for a developer. So if we go over to our subsettings, we will locate the subsetting that we're going to work with, which is our user one, and we're going to go straight to authorization. Everything is turned off. So we're going to have to consider what sort of admin rights we're going to give this type of user. Now, you could look at giving the user the runner's admin right, but that is generally thought to be a more of a sort of occasional ad hoc type of right, especially if you enable approval. If you have someone that's performing lots of elevations and you have approval enabled, then, for example, I have 5 applications to elevate. I would have to request 5 approvals. For a developer, that could be quite disruptive. So that's why we have the admin session feature with admin by request. I can just show you the feature, show it to you with approval, so you get an idea. Now, I'm saying that if you're onboarding developers with admin by request and those developers had previously had local admin rights, which is normally the case, I would generally recommend that you would not enable approval at the start. And also, I would give them an increased amount of time on the session. And that is because if you're coming from a place where you've always had your admin rights and all of a sudden you're given admin by request, which has this timer, you could sort of get a little bit, have a bit of timer countdown anxiety in that you're worried about this clock kind of ticking down. So what I would do initially anyway is give those people far more time than they need, and that will just make them feel sort of more comfortable working with the solution. And then what you can do is you can tell them, you know what, you have the ability to start your session. We're asking you to type in a reason, but it's totally, you just put in what you're gonna, why you're gonna start the session, and you can start it when you want. And then when you're finished doing what you need to do, then just stop the session, because you can always start it again. And in that way, you get much better acceptance as opposed to from day one starting with approval, which for some developers can be kind of a little bit riling for them because they used to be able to do things without having to sort of beg for admin rights. So going down that kind of hard approval from day one is for some developers can be quite hard to take, let's just say. But for the moment, let's just have a look at approval and turn that on. So over on my endpoint, so I'm a developer, I need to install some programs. So what I would do is I would request my admin session like so. Now I have approval turned on, so I'm going to request a reason. So I need a session to elevate, install a number of applications, including Notepad++ and VLC. Fair enough. I'm going to hit OK, and that sends my request off to the help desk team that is managing my department. It could even be my head of development, for example, because you can configure the portal so that the head of development can log in and just see the development computers and requests. So over on the portal, we'll see the request for the session, just as with the POP scenario where you get the individual per application request coming in. I get a session request coming in, and I get the user, I get the computer name, and I also know that he's requesting a session and the reason for it. So I can now approve that. And as with the runners admin case, you can see here that that request is now waiting to be used. It's approved, but as long as it's here, it's not being used yet. Over on the endpoint, you can see my session's already shown up on my screen, so I can now hit yes and start my session. Now I'm using version 8 here, so you can see I've got MFA configured, so I can just hit approve, on my face, smile, and then my session is cleared, and I should get my timer up. And with a timer, and you can see I've given myself loads of time here, I can now perform those, multiple elevations like so. And notice also that when a session is running, the way how we configured the MFA feature in version 8 is that once you have MFA clearance to start the session, applications that you then launch inside the session do not require additional MFAs. And again, that would be quite disruptive and time consuming to have to keep constantly, looking into your phone to do face scans for every single thing you are elevating. So that's a conscious choice on our side. Although you have your session running, we still have some protection. So you still have that malware protection feature. So that's where we when you elevate something or attempt to elevate something, we look at the checksum. It goes for sent off to OpSWAT MetaDefender, and there's a battery of 20 different types of 20 different vendors of AV, and that checksum is queried. There's very low resource use on that, and then if it comes back as potentially suspicious, malicious, we don't let you elevate that. And actually in a session, you'll see that if I try and elevate that, the malware system will come back with a block, and I've configured it in this way to terminate the session as well. And on terminating the session, I've also configured admin by request to take down anything that was elevated at the time of the session as well. So that can be quite handy. So if we have a look over in the audit log, if I hit refresh, you can see that the request is now being used, so it disappears from approved. And we go over to the audit log, have a look in sessions. You can see this is that last session, and you can see also that I had these numbers here. So the first number is applications successfully installed, the second number is applications uninstalled, and the last number is 2. So that would be number of processes that were attempted or elevated. In this case, one of them was not elevated, but you can see was logged, and Notepad++ was elevated. It's quite handy to be able to see when there is a malware detection, what else was elevated at the time, because it could have been possible that the malware had originated from inside the kind of other process, and that's it kind of popped out. So you can see the kind of trail of how something arrived and perhaps was executed that way. So that really, in a nutshell, is a good configuration and a good use case match for developers. As I said, probably at the start, I would not go with the approval, especially if a developer had always had local admin rights beforehand. So now in this configuration, we're just requiring the developer to put in a reason. So if we just go and have a look at how that works, if I go here and go request admin access, I still have to put in a reason. So I am elevating Notepad++ again to install it. But now, as opposed to going off for a request, I get my MFA challenge again. So this time I just get straight through. I just go to approve, base, and I can then get my session up. So I don't need to ask for any approval to get my session going. So this is probably what I would recommend you do at the start. And maybe what happens is if you start off like this, and if there's some sort of abuse of the session, then maybe you can move people to another subsetting that does need approval, and that can be kind of like a sin bin. And also, you still have control, even though you're running a session, you still have control of what can and can't be elevated. And the configuration I have is blocking system files, but probably for a developer, they would need access to elevate either all system files, or you can put in kind of the pre-approval, these kind of whitelist rules to allow them to elevate specific executables. For example, you could block all system files, but allow them to elevate PowerShell, for example. Okay, so that is the Whiz usage persona. I hope the demonstration's been useful, and I'll see you again soon.